Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and thanks to David, and happy birthday to Hannah. I want to thank Moreshet Derech and Israel Guides for inviting me to give this lecture, seminar, whatever. And special thanks to David and Hannah, who have always been very supportive and encouraging. We want to pray for the speedy release of all the hostages and their return home, and pray for the safety of our armed forces and a speedy end to the war. Um, a little bit of my CV, because I think I know everybody who has come on so far, but you may not know about my background. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. It's a nice place to be from. In 1980, after receiving my doctorate in education, I made Aliyah with my family. I worked for over 30 years in what could be called educational tourism at the Milton Center at Hebrew University and with Ramah in Israel. I finished the tour guide course in 1996. And as a freelance guide, I've guided a lot of birthright groups and many synagogue groups, evangelical pilgrimages, especially those that identify as independent Baptists. If you ask me what that is, not on my time right now. And of course, I've guided a lot of FITs with various affiliations. Most important, I'm married to Sue. Some of you know her. She's wonderful. We're parents of 4 and grandparents of 14. Baruch Hashem. Some of you have at least as much guiding experience as I have, if not more. And others of you may, no, I don't think there's any new guides on the right now on the seminar, but I'm not offering chidushim of various kinds. Rather, God willing, when, not if, but when religious tourists start to come back to Israel, we should remember that we are not just doing a job, but we're fulfilling a very important role with a lot of potential for Kiddush Hashem. Okay. While I finish my introduction, I'm going to share my screen because you guys are so nice. Let's see if I got the right thing here. 1 second. Let me get rid of this. And I'm going to be with you in just one moment. Okay, let's see. Can you see my screen? I need somebody to respond.
Oh, no.
No, you cannot see it?
No.
Now we do.
Oh, okay. I didn't give enough time to register. Let me try this again. I'm going to share because you're so nice. And this is what I want to share. Yeah, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I'm going to put on the slideshow. And I'm sorry you're not going to see too much of me right now, depending on how you have it configured. But here we will get going now. Okay, so if we want to work with especially religious tourists, and we'll get into some of these definitions in a little bit, we have to be inspiring. And we can't be inspiring unless we're inspired, unless we remember what it is that we're trying to do. So the material in this seminar is relevant for guiding Jews or Christians, even Muslims. It's a revision of a segment of a 7-hour Zoom seminar I did for English-speaking guides. It was a tour guide course in 2020 during Corona. I'm sure my colleagues would like to add a lot of anecdotes and bits of wisdom, but we're not going to have time for a discussion so much. You can put questions or comments in the chat, and we'll see if we can get there at the end. I've asked David and Hannah to send you a link to the recording once it is available. And as you'll see, it really will complement what I'm trying to do. And of course, most of you have my contact information. And for those of you who don't, it will appear later on. Okay, so I'm going to open with the following, just to soak it in. Some journeys we choose to go on, some journeys choose us. I'm not going to give a Perush. I'll let you just like soak that in. So of course, please don't use this without permission and blah, blah, blah. Okay, especially blah. I'm going to start at the end. The end are the references. There are three main books that I used in preparing and a lot of different articles. And what often happens in such seminars is that you run out of time and don't have a chance to even show how you can continue this process. So one book is by Jackie Feldman. Some of you, if you did the Christianity specialization with Yiska Harani, she often has Jackie come to speak. He was a tour guide. Now he's a professor of sociology and anthropology or something like that. And I was so inspired by the lectures that he gave about what it was like for him, a nice Jewish boy from New York, to guide Christian pilgrims. And it's helped me a lot in my work with Christian pilgrims. So I encourage you to get it on Amazon. I don't think you can buy it in any particular store. Another book was written by a Reform rabbi named Lawrence Hoffman. Notice he uses the word pilgrim, which is going to be our topic here. And it's a nice little companion, as it says, for groups or even individuals that want to get the most spiritual meaning out of their trip to Israel. And finally, Walking the Bible. Bruce Feiler is a wonderful speaker, presenter, writer. He writes as well as he speaks. And I found it very inspiring. And you'll see a lot of quotes from his book there. On YouTube, you can look up Sacred Journeys, especially on Jerusalem. And he just has a terrific way of presenting things. And here are some other references. And again, one of the reasons that we're recording this is that we're not going to there are many things I'm going to be running through or skipping, but they will appear on the presentation so you can look them up later on. So now that we got all of that out of the way, how did I choose this particular topic? Since elementary school, I've been fascinated by the story of the Pilgrims with a capital P, all right, who set sail from Plymouth, England, on the Mayflower ship in 1620 in order to escape religious intolerance. And they landed on the shore of today's Massachusetts. I hope I said that accurately enough, on what became known as Plymouth Rock. By the way, the first Thanksgiving took place a year after that, not on that year. I always wanted to make a pilgrimage to Plymouth Rock because it meant something to me. I learned about it in school and there was something like that. So finally, in 2018, when we were in Massachusetts, and my wife and I decided we were going to go to Plymouth Rock. So look at this monumental structure. Wow, this must be something grandiose because look at this monumental structure. Okay, but as we started to approach, okay, then I heard a guide say to his group, "You might be underwhelmed by what you see." Well, that concerned me a little bit, but say, okay, let's go see what it is all about. So I wasn't expecting the Rock of Gibraltar, but I was expecting something magnificent. And this is what it was. All right. That's the Rock of Gibraltar. Excuse me, that's sorry, Freudian slip. That is the Rock of that is Plymouth Rock. You saw the size relative. Here you can see the year 1620. And I think the park ranger that said you might be underwhelmed was actually overstating it. Or he couldn't understand, or he couldn't have understated it anymore. And so the quote here: pilgrimages by their very nature are about expectations and what happens when those expectations meet reality on the ground. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go through. Here are some archetypes of pilgrims and pilgrimages from all three Abrahamic religions. Of course, Abraham himself had all kinds of pilgrimages and journeys. Jacob, right, on his way to Haran, and he has the dream about a ladder, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. The children of Israel made their pilgrimage from all the way from Egypt to Canaan by way of Sinai. We have Elkanah, the father of the prophet Samuel, who went from Ramah, not Camp Ramah, but just Ramah in northern Jerusalem to Shiloh. Jesus made several pilgrimages to Jerusalem in his life. And of course, the last pilgrimage was a one-way ticket, and that became Holy Week. And Muhammad, with his various journeys, both in the Hadith, I call it the Islamic Midrash, as well as the famous Hijrah from Mecca to Medina. So these are like, and when people go on pilgrimages, in some ways they're emulating those characters. So what is a pilgrimage and who is a pilgrim? I use the word pilgrimage actually as Aliyah l'regel, which, by the way, literally means an ascent at an appointed time. Shalosh regalim. A regal is not a holiday. We refer to it that way, okay? But it means an appointed time. Shalosh regalim. 3 times a year you shall hold a festival for me, all right? Obviously Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And shalosh pamim bashana yera'eh kol zechurcha. 3 times a year all your males shall appear. It literally means shall be seen. You're making an appearance. You have to be seen before the Lord your God. And of course, you bring a sacrifice of re'iyah, right from that term, yera'eh, of being seen. You bring a sacrifice along with 2 other sacrifices of the Chagigah and Simcha. The word pilgrim comes from the Latin peregrinos, if I pronounce that correctly, one who comes from afar. Not all pilgrims come from very far, but I would say in most cases you're going to run into such a phenomenon, and we'll talk more about that. And okay. Now I'm going to introduce another term which is kind of synonymous, and that's the term that we use in modern Hebrew, tzalyanut, from the word tzali from the Aramaic, which is to pray. And it almost always refers, at least in modern Hebrew, to Christian pilgrimage. I tried to find the source of the use of the word, and you find it in all the literature, of modern times, but I don't know who first used that term. Maybe it was, I don't know. Somebody finds out, please let me know. So now a pilgrimage could either be a whole tour, or it might be to specific places. And again, it applies to all 3 Abrahamic religions. So here's a definition of pilgrimage from a guy named Alan Marinas, and this is again from Jackie Feldman's book. a journey undertaken by a person in a quest of a place or state that he or she believes to embody a valued ideal. In other words, it doesn't have to be religious, okay, to be a pilgrimage. And that's why I brought the example of Plymouth Rock. Right? There's nothing, although they were escaping, intolerance and wanted to be religious, that wasn't the point. My point of my pilgrimage had nothing to do with religion. It had to do with American ideals or what have you. But then he continues and says, in the case of the Holy Land, the pilgrimage has traditionally been undertaken to reenact religious history. Okay, you want to be there. You want to be walking through Hezekiah's tunnel. You want to be, you'll be at the place where Jesus was on the shore of the Kinneret, of the Sea of Galilee. Reaffirm basic tenets of faith. By coming on pilgrimage, you're, call it a shot in the arm. You're reaffirming your faith, and also you're feeling part of a larger community of the faithful. That either means the community that you came with, or in general, the affiliation that you have. You now feel more connected somehow. Now, here, I'm just going to zip through these in the interest of time. All kinds of possible destinations of pilgrimages. Okay, I included 770 here. And of course, Ma'arat HaMachpelah. And some of these you might not quite know, especially if you weren't brought up in America, like this Mount Rushmore, Arlington National Cemetery. That was an amazing trip that I did there. Washington Monument, and Machu Picchu, which of course is in South America in Peru. And I have never been there and may not ever get there in my lifetime. Anybody recognize this? I can't see you, so if you nod, I won't even know. But we have the Santiago de Compostela. It's supposed to be where Peter was buried. Excuse me, where James, the brother of, I take that back again, James, the disciple, the son of Zebedee, where he was supposed to be buried and whatever. It's a big pilgrimage for Catholics. And of course, pilgrimage to Kvarim, to the graves of Herzl or Rachel, both, if you could put in the umbrella of Zionistic pilgrimages. And of course, to the military cemetery, I brought here the gravestone of Aner Shapira, who the hero from October 7th, who threw out all those hand grenades, sacrificing his life, and of course, a lot more. Tzfat, of course, there's so many graves to visit there. I guided a group once there for 4.5 hours just in the cemetery. Just in the cemetery. It's amazing. Okay. Kever David, we all know that it may or may not be the Kever of David, but who cares? Here's a picture of Allenby coming into the Jaffa Gate. This picture is a little bit more unusual. Some of you may not have ever seen this. We usually see a different picture of him having walked in, but here he comes in, and here he's giving his talk to the crowd in front of Migdal David, the Tower of David. And of course, we have, not of course, but in modern times, in 2017, was it? I can't see because it's being covered up by our screen saving. But we have a relative, a great nephew of Field Marshal Edmund Allenby, who came to where else? Migdal David. Okay. Of course, Haram al-Sharif, or what we call the Temple Mount, of course, they're not facing the Dome of the Rock, but rather they're facing the Kaaba in Mecca. That's their epicenter and so forth. And here's the Taj Mahal. Has nothing to do with Islam. It's just a very nice place that people make a pilgrimage to. And of course, unfortunately, we have sites related to October 7th, such as the Nova, the Park Re'im, where the Nova took place, the car cemetery in Tacoma, And the Hasha Square, a lot of tourists that I have had the occasional pleasure of guiding in the last year and a half or so, all want to go to the Hasha Square. So that's that. And finally, all kinds of Christian sites. Well, not finally, but, and of course, Baha'i. You can make a pilgrimage to Baha'i even if you're not a member of Baha'i. And I couldn't find a good picture of Ir David. So here we have, and I already mentioned Hezekiah's tunnel and so forth. March of the Living. That is a pilgrimage par excellence. And of course, what you see is they are marching from, they're making a Aliyah Regel on 2 feet to from Auschwitz I to Birkenau. And in the same theme, we have the you have Yad Vashem, where people make a pilgrimage. The government sends VIPs there, and so on and so forth. Metzadah at sunrise, from the west, by the way, not from the east. A lot of people come to Israel and say, "Wait, we've got to go to Metzadah." That is a pilgrimage for them, right? They've been looking forward to it, etc. And we'll talk about it. And finally, yours truly, um, at Half Dome in Yosemite National Park in California. And my three of my siblings and myself got up in the middle of the night in order to see the sunrise there. And of course, I used the opportunity to daven, and my brother got this picture as well as some others. Okay, what I want to try to do as a focus here is trying to understand the difference between a standard tour and a pilgrimage, or any kind of pilgrimage, but because we're dealing with the Holy Land here, or Israel, let's call it a spiritual pilgrimage. And you can see that there's a lot of overlap. Okay, on a standard tour, you could make a pilgrimage to a particular place. Similarly, on a whole spiritual pilgrimage, chock full from every day, going from religious site to religious site, you could still go to Ben Yehuda Street and have a falafel or whatever. So there is a lot of overlap, but based on the what I have below, Fehe, I don't know how to pronounce his name, pilgrims or tourists, but I did a lot of editing here in order to compare a standard tour with a pilgrimage. And here I'm just going to highlight a few things. I'm not going to read through everything else. So you can, God willing, you'll be able to go through the recording if you really want to go into depth. Now, I'm going to put the emphasis here on the pilgrimage because we kind of all know the standard tour. I don't mean to dump on a standard tour. Halavai that we should all have a lot of standard tours to guide. We need those too. But the emphasis here on the pilgrimage, first of all, motivation is the spiritual fulfillment and inspiration. There's an expectation of finding meaning and transformation. I'm going to be transformed through this. That's an anticipation that they have. People can be very excited about coming to a standard tour, but it's different. All right. They may come just out of curiosity or what have you. Preparing for the trip, there's a spiritual anticipation that the pilgrims have. And as you can see in a standard tour, people will read a guidebook, and maybe they'll learn the local language. I'm going to Bulgaria next week, and I can read the alphabet, but not much else. I think I have 2 words down so far. Group leadership. Okay, on a standard tour, there might be a tour leader who organized the trip, or it might be just a sign-up trip from Gate One or one of those organizations, and it's just you. It's just you, the guide, I call it the kolboinik. You're the do all and be all, and the focus of the whole trip. But when you have a a religious pilgrimage or spiritual pilgrimage, by and large, you're working in partnership with a pastor, a rabbi, an imam, whoever it might be. So the role of the tour guide in a standard tour, is to help people find their way, to explain. When I say interpreter, I don't mean to translate. You're interpreting the sites. You're presenting the context, etc. So in a pilgrimage, what you're, in addition to all the above, you want to facilitate religious and spiritual experience. Again, facilitate it might not mean that you participate, but you're an enabler of religious experiences. You want those people to have to fulfill the expectations that they came with. Okay. I'm going to continue on to the involvement of the tourists. On a standard tour, people come, they want R&R. I'm here, I'm sitting back, I'm taking a vacation. I don't want to work very hard. Okay. Unless they come and they do want to do hiking, it's a different story. But on a pilgrimage, there's an emotional engagement. The pilgrims are with you. They want to be involved. Okay. They want to be there. And I don't know where this quote came from. I should have given a reference, but I really like it. The inner journey that parallels the physical journey. Okay, you are involved in what's going on. Itinerary elements. In a standard tour, it can be all kinds of things that you see here. In the pilgrimage, it's going to be primarily sacred places and looking forward to sacred moments, and of course ritual observances, and what have you. I'm sure some of you have had, like I have had, I've had tourists, not so much large groups, but families or even individuals that want to go to Kivrei Tzadikim, and that's it. They just want to go to the graves of the righteous people. They don't want to see, they don't want to sightsee. This is their fulfillment. This is what they want to do. Okay. The timing and pace, right, on the evangelicals that I've guided, we never, at least especially in Jerusalem, we never left the hotel later than 7:30 in the morning. And even in summertime, we want to make sure we get every hour in there, because they've come to the Holy Land, and we want to see as much of the Holy Land as we possibly can. So work alone all the way till dinner. And then usually after dinner, they'll have their own like group meetings of either unpacking the day or Bible study or whatever it might be. Just a few more things. A relationship to the sites. Okay. The usual things on a standard tour, intellectual curiosity, and so forth. Yeah. But when it comes to the pilgrims, they have this, they want to be part of what's there. I call it reverent silence and meditation. Too often we take people to places and say, okay, wasn't this nice? Now we have to go. So while in the standard tour, people might go home and say, I was there, a check mark, maybe even bragging a bit, right? I was there. Okay. But from a pilgrimage, whether it's Jewish or it doesn't matter, Jewish or Christian, that they will say something like, I was there and I'll never relate to it in the same way. Now, when I read about just what comes to my head again is Hezekiah's tunnel. When I read about that again, I'll never ever see it in a different way. I'm going to see it the way I saw it here when I was in Israel. Presentation of history. This is really important, in my opinion. Right, on a standard tour, you should be open to critical and historical perspectives of nuance, talking about different narratives, different truths, even, right? And perhaps a challenge conventional wisdom. But on a pilgrimage, you have to be careful, because people want religious truth, which is not always synonymous with actual truth. All right. And that people want to confirm their faith, not to be challenged by it. So it's a little difficult to be intellectually honest. Okay. with when you talk about religious groups. With a standard tour, I'll always talk about minimalists and maximalists when it comes to biblical archaeology. I'm not sure I would go into all of that with in a pilgrimage. It has to be, you have to feel the group, all right, and check with the um, of course check with the spiritual leader, whoever is leading the group, and make sure that you're on the right path. And the word verification is awfully important. People come on a pilgrimage to verify their beliefs and so forth. I'm going to skip over text for right now. Spending money is really important in a pilgrimage. People come for religious souvenirs. I just had a communication with a family that I'm supposed to guide in a couple of weeks. And I suggested to them that they look around their house, and this is a modern Orthodox family. I said, look around your house and see if there are Judaica items, either art or ritual items that you might want to purchase while you're on your trip. I got the nicest email back. Thank you so much for thinking of that. Wow, it never would have occurred to us. So, so people want those religious souvenirs. And then there's the after the trip. On a standard tour, people go home, and that's kind of the end of it. They plan their next trip. For the pilgrimage, the spiritual leader, the trip leader, will go back with his flock or her flock and say, and be able to continue with them. Sometimes, I don't know if the others on the seminar who feel this way, sometimes I feel a little jealous that they get to go home with those people. And I've had like I've had this shot, I've given them this shot in the arm, and then that's it. However, I have a number of people that I communicate with on a kind of a regular basis. I have to move right on. Um, and I think this is a very important statement. The one thing all pilgrimages have in common is it gives the pilgrim a chance to escape the ordinary and to encounter the extraordinary. That's really, really important. It kind of like summarizes all of that. I'm jumping down to their beliefs are less abstract and more concrete, right? Because they've seen where things happened in the Bible or whatever it is. And it's a sacred journey that gives the pilgrim the chance to experience something real. They're really seeing the Galilee where Jesus preached. They're really seeing Marata Machpelah, all right, and so on and so forth. These two verses to me are the most important verses for a religious experience, a religious pilgrimage. And right, Achen yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh v'anochi lo yadati. To me, that really speaks to experiences that people have here, and are what, from my experience, the pilgrims, the people coming on the pilgrimage will often find God, okay, in quotation marks, they'll find God in places and times that you least expect it. But it means so much to them, right? What might be for us, we've been there, done that, and everything else. And for some people, wow, this is the most meaningful thing to me. So I always think of these verses. These come back to me all the time. People find out their own Shara Hashamayim, their own gateway to heaven. And sometimes it's not what we as the guide or even the spiritual leader would have you thought of in advance. Here are some random suggestions of creating spiritual experiences for pilgrims. I'm going to skip over peak experiences for a second. Setting the mood. Okay, when you arrive at a place, set the mood with music or a reading, a quote from the Bible, a story, and that might be by you, the guide, or by the spiritual leader who's bringing the people. Prepare the people for what's going to take place. before you get there, of course. Build up the anticipation. In advance, think about where are the people going to sit or stand or whatever. You want to create the setting, like setting the stage, so to speak, of where you are going. You have to deal with the reality of the crowds, the noise, weather, fatigue, the WC, the Shea routine. You have to try to deal with that in the best way you can. This is really, I learned this al basari, right? I learned this, what we say in English the hard way, to make administrative announcements before either a prayer or visits to religious sites or whatever it is. Don't break the mood. Okay. I am guilty of having been in places they have this nice prayer session, or they're at the garden tomb or wherever it might be, and they say, "Okay, everybody, we got to get back on the bus," and that really destroys things. Okay, so in advance, you say, "We're going to be here for a few minutes or until, as of time X, please be back on the bus." And then you can gently direct people back to the bus rather than breaking the mood. Use the bus time when you can for historical background or logistics. You cannot do that on a birthright trip. It will never, ever, ever work. But certainly on pilgrimages, it does. Time for silence. This is so important. It says in the Psalms, which can be interpreted. You'll see it translated in different ways. It can be translated to you, silence is praise. And we too often do blah blah and not use silence the way that we can. I've done almost every group that I've birthright group as well as pilgrimage group that I've have. I always find one or maximum two spots where I just say, before we move from here, we're going to have 5 minutes of absolute silence. Don't shuffle your feet or anything. 5 minutes of absolute silence. Turn off your phones and whatever, and just be there. I'm telling you, there isn't a single trip that I did that with that somebody didn't come to me and said, those were the most meaningful 5 minutes of the entire trip. So silence, all right, silence that's mechuvan, not silence because you don't know what to do, but silence that you program in can be very meaningful. And conscious use of self. You might not be one of them, meaning that they are not your branch of Judaism, or they're not or they are Christian of various kinds or whatever. You're not joining them, but you're a facilitator. You're there to enable them to have an experience and to act as a catalyst. Okay. I am indeed watching my time. Make the connection with other experiences in the trip. That's true for any trip. You want to always make the connections. Remember, we are by this and themes that go on. But in a spiritual experience, it's really, really important. And another thing is try to keep up the excitement. Remember, for most of the people that will come on these kind of experiences, they're going to come once and maybe not ever come again. And this might be their first time. You want them to feel like it's also a first time for you. Not because of incompetence, of course, but you're going to experience it. You're going to have them experience it for the first time. This is a group of from a commune in California that wanted to, at 6:30 in the morning, we set sail from Tiberias. We went out in the middle of the Kinneret, turned off the motor, and meditated for 45 minutes. That's what they asked for. So that's what you see going on. What you don't see is me with my talit and tefillin on, because I use this as a time to daven. But and they did this 2 mornings in a row. Really, absolutely remarkable. Another place for that silence or meditation is in the Gachmanim in Gethsemane. not in the main place that everybody goes to, but across the street which is gated, and you have to get permission to go in. And it really is a wonderful place for people just to be able to meditate and whatever. Usually, in my experience, a pastor will have a brief service or a brief sermon. I think brief sermon is an oxymoron. I think it's, I think it's a brief sermon, but and then give people time just to meditate and to be there. Okay. So the role of the tour guide with religious tourists. Okay, now Eric Cohen, you don't have to go through all these things, pathfinding and meditating, whatever. He's trying to describe what any tour guide does. But what you want to do is to form the diverse sites of the tour into a spiritual path, right? You're there to not just set the tone, but to follow up. This is something, I'm not going to spend time on this, but this is from the book by Rabbi Hoffman of how to anticipate each and every place that we're going to go to, how to anticipate, how to approach it, how to acknowledge being there, and the afterthought. It's kind of interesting. Do we still have a few minutes left? I can't see anybody, so I don't know if I could get
Few,
David
Joe.
or
Few, Joe.
a
Few.
few. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this
Like
is
five
really
minutes, Joe.
5 minutes.
Okay.
Is 5 minutes is perfect. Thank you.
All right.
All right. So if you're guiding people of another religion who ask you, how can you guide them on their pilgrimage if you don't share their beliefs, right? How can you, right? I get asked all the time, how come you know so much about Jesus, but you don't believe in him, right? So here are some of the things that Jackie says in his book. Look, you're traveling to the Bible land to strengthen your faith. You haven't come on my pilgrimage. I've come to help you do yours, right? You're a facilitator. I'm there. And if I can help you do that and have a marvelous and meaningful experience, then so be it. He also says the guide who acts more pious or more honest or more respectful of his pilgrim's beliefs than he feels in private, off-stage life is not necessarily duping his audience. In other words, you're filling a role, and sometimes we have to play a role which is not us. And what you need to do is you want to empathize with the people without necessarily praying with them or whatever, but you want to be excited for them about what they are doing. So, and finally, in this category, if you're a Jewish guide and you ask by a Christian pilgrim if you believe in Jesus, you might say, this is what Yiska Harani told me privately once, I'm I'm of the faith of Jesus, not the faith in Jesus. Meaning what? I see myself as an authentic descendant of the Jews, if you will, Pharisees that Jesus belonged to, but I don't. But I don't have faith in Jesus per se. Here's a push for not letting politics bog you down. Okay. Um, this is a wonderful quote from Abraham Joshua Heschel. I'll let you do it on your own. If I had another hour or so, one of the things that I would do is to play you this song, but of course it's 9 days, so maybe we shouldn't do music anyway. But please, on YouTube, look up this song. There's one that was done by an organization called Makor, which has it's a YouTube of the song with Kobe O's singing and the English subtitles. And there's some really cool things here about the idea of pilgrimage. Okay. And it says, I feel like myself, thank God. A crown did not await me, nor donkeys, meaning he went into Nikbat Shiloach and for his spiritual experience, and it wasn't there. And he comes out and he says, I don't feel very pure. but I have a feeling I'll return. And then just a series, a few psalms that work with Jewish audiences of any branch of Judaism, as well as any Christian denomination, but especially evangelicals or Protestants, I should say,
Joe,
who, yeah,
it's coming.
okay, I'm
Almost.
there.
About another
I'm
minute. Another minute.
okay. That's it. So this is the summary. I have this and one more slide, and that's it. Here's a pastor that said, we haven't come here to take pictures, though we will take pictures. We haven't come here to be world travelers, though you are now all world travelers. We haven't come here to be educated, though we've all learned much. We've come to seek our God and dedicate ourselves to Him. The purpose of this trip is not travel and education and enjoyment, but to have ourselves drawn nearer to our Creator. So when you go back home, you can tell your friends that the plane ride was terrible, or you can tell them how the Spirit of God touched you. And if you don't know this quote, it's an amazing quote that you should write down and keep up, because traveling does turn you into a storyteller.
Joe, thank you very, very
Mm-hmm.
much. My only comment is that I think that the tourism ministry, whoever runs the teachings for the future guides, if there will be, should definitely bring you in to teach about pilgrims in general
Yeah.
and what you taught
Mm-hmm.
us today. So
Mm-hmm. Thank
that's
you.
my recommendation. If anyone else has any comments or would like to post